And tell me exactly what's happened.
I've got an individual that's shortness of breath, very hot, thinks he's going to pass out, and is producing a little bit of blood, coughing up some blood.
They said Kyle Busch's death was just a sudden medical tragedy, but his final 911 call left behind too many questions. Why was the ambulance asked to arrive without sirens? Why were paramedics told to enter through a side door? And why, just days before he collapsed, did Kyle begin doing things that felt like quiet goodbyes? From a silent night inside a church to an unexpected reconciliation with a lifelong rival after 18 years, it no longer felt like coincidence. Today, we look back at Kyle Busch's final 11 days, not only to understand the strange signs before he passed, but to honor a great warrior who left the track with the pride and dignity of a true champion. The Thursday appointment that never happened. Hours after NASCAR announced Kyle Busch's death, Dale Earnhardt Jr. posted a story on X that stopped fans cold. It was not a simple tribute. It was a confession about a feud that had lasted for years. From 2005 to 2017, Dale Jr. and Kyle could barely share the same space. They clashed on the track, traded words in interviews, and became one of NASCAR's most personal rivalries. The 2007 Richmond incident only made it worse. That same year, Kyle lost his Hendrick Motorsports seat when Dale Jr. arrived, and that wound followed him for a long time. But years later, Kyle quietly walked into Dale Jr.'s motorhome. They talked for 4 hours. Neither man ever revealed exactly what was said. After the funeral, Dale Jr. shared one private message Kyle had sent months earlier. Kyle had apologized for Richmond 2007. For fans, that hit hard. Nobody expected Rowdy, of all people, to say sorry after 18 years. The two had even planned something special. Kyle was supposed to drive one of Dale Jr.'s late models at North Wilkesboro that summer. His seat fitting was scheduled for May 29th at JR Motorsports. Kyle was excited and had joked that, for once, both fan bases would have to cheer for the same driver. That seat is still sitting in the shop today. Dale Jr. never packed it away. He left it there, almost like it is still waiting for Kyle to walk through the door. The fitting was set for May 29th. Kyle died on May 21st, 8 days short. One of NASCAR's most beautiful comeback stories never got its final lap. To understand how everything unraveled, we have to go back 11 days earlier, to a road course in New York and a radio call almost nobody noticed. The motorhome injection. The first red flag. Sunday, May 10th. Watkins Glen, New York. Kyle Busch is behind the wheel of the number 8 Chevrolet for Richard Childress Racing in the Cup Series. For the first time in the entire 2026 season, his car is genuinely fast. He's running in the top 10. The way he's wheeling that car around the road course has guys in the garage nodding, flashing back to the Joe Gibbs Racing era Kyle Busch, the driver who had NASCAR in a chokehold for a decade. With just a few laps left, Kyle keyed his radio. His request was brief. Get a hold of Dr. Bill Heisel at OrthoCarolina. He needed a shot post-race. His spotter asked if he wanted to see the doc at the hauler or the motorhome. Kyle chose the motorhome. That radio chatter was broadcast live on Fox Sports. Millions heard it. Mike Joy, the veteran play-by-play announcer, chalked it up in seconds. A sinus infection combined with a road course. Watkins Glen is packed with heavy braking zones and high G-forces, more than enough to turn a mild sinus ache into a blinding headache. Nobody batted an eye. But there was a detail that flew over the heads of most viewers that day. Bill Heisel isn't just a run-of-the-mill track medic. He is the director of motorsports medicine at OrthoCarolina, the most respected medical professional in the NASCAR garage. A driver doesn't call for him by name unless he knows exactly what he needs. Kyle knew. After Kyle's death, several national outlets reached out to Bill Heisel about that motorhome visit. He declined to comment. In sports medicine, a doctor can often share information about a deceased patient if the family signs off on it. Heisel's silence, therefore, wasn't the silence of a guy who didn't know anything. It was the silence of a man who knew something he simply couldn't say. Adding another layer of heartbreak, that Sunday was also his daughter Lennox's 4th birthday. While the little girl was blowing out candles at home with her mom, her dad was sitting in a motorhome in a different state, waiting for a needle. Kyle finished 8th that day. It was his best run of the 2026 season. On paper, it was a successful weekend. But from the moment he called for Bill Heisel, a doomsday clock had started ticking. 11 days. The final win and a prophetic warning. Friday, May 15th. Dover Motor Speedway. The Truck Series race. Kyle Busch drove like a man who had already conquered everything there was to conquer. He won the pole, swept both stages, led 147 of 200 laps, and finished more than 3 seconds ahead of the field. It was his 69th Truck Series victory, a number so unreal it may never be touched again. But what fans remember most was not the dominance. It was the silence afterward. There was no classic rowdy burnout, no screaming over the radio. After the checkered flag, Kyle simply sat alone in the truck for a few quiet seconds, staring into the Dover sky. One fan near Victory Lane later said it looked like he was silently thanking someone. When a reporter asked why winning still meant so much to him after all these years, Kyle admitted that moments like these had to be cherished, because nobody ever knows when the last win will come. At the time, it sounded like another racing cliché. Looking back now, it feels heartbreaking. Even during the press conference, he repeated the same thought again. Friends who had known Kyle for years later admitted it did not sound like the Kyle they remembered. He was always focused on the next race, the next battle, the next victory. But that weekend felt different, almost like something deep inside him already knew. There was another small moment most people missed. Before leaving the track that night, Kyle stopped to shake hands with every single member of his crew. His crew chief later said it genuinely felt like Kyle was saying goodbye to something, even if nobody could explain why. The next morning, Kyle kept interviews short and quietly admitted he was not feeling well. Nobody thought much of it. In NASCAR, drivers are expected to push through pain no matter what. 2 days later, he made his final Instagram post. And at the time, nobody in the world realized they were watching the last chapter of Kyle Busch unfold in real time. 3 days of peace. The unseen final moments. Monday, May 18th, Brexton Busch turned 11. Kyle posted a few photos of his son on Instagram, writing that there was no limit to what Brexton could become. No one knew it would be the last post of Kyle's life. That same day, Samantha shared her own birthday message, calling Brexton her driven, funny, kind-hearted little boy. At the time, it was pure joy. 3 days later, those words would feel almost unbearable to read. On Tuesday, Kyle and Brexton went to the grand opening of a new Andretti indoor karting facility in Durham, North Carolina. Mario Andretti was there, and one guest later remembered seeing Kyle and Brexton laughing together in the arcade. It looked so sweet that the guest did not want to interrupt them. After Kyle's passing, the family received security footage from that night. That was when they noticed something painful. While playing with his son, Kyle had sat down, breathing hard and wiping his forehead. Brexton kept laughing at the arcade machine, and Kyle smiled back at him. But in the middle of that perfect father and son moment, his body was already failing him. Later that night, one local resident claimed Kyle quietly entered a small church alone and sat near the back. It has never been officially confirmed. Whatever he may have prayed for, nobody will ever know. The next day, Mario Andretti showed reporters a video of Kyle smiling and shaking his hand. Days later, when the news broke, Andretti said Kyle's death was one of the biggest shocks of his life. On Tuesday, Kyle was laughing with his son, meeting a racing legend, and maybe sitting alone in a quiet church. 24 hours later, he was on his bathroom floor, coughing up blood. The body fails before the mind. The silent 911 call Wednesday, May 20th. Kyle was at the GM Charlotte Technical Center in Concord, North Carolina. For him, Spending the day in Chevrolet's simulator was normal race prep. But after the funeral, one employee shared a detail that shook the NASCAR world. Kyle had spent more than 6 straight hours in the simulator without stopping. No food, no water, no real break. What worried people most was not the workload. It was his body. He was hunched over, pressing one hand hard against his stomach, as if he was trying to hide unbearable pain. Later, his family found a selfie on his phone, taken in the bathroom mirror at 5:18 p.m. They never released it, only saying that this was the moment Kyle knew. His face was pale, his eyes were red, and sweat covered his forehead. 12 minutes later, the 911 call went out. At 5:30 p.m., emergency services were called to the facility. The caller said Kyle was struggling to breathe, burning up, bleeding, coughing up blood, and still conscious on the bathroom floor. 3 details from the call haunted fans. The caller kept stressing that Kyle was awake. They asked the ambulance to come without sirens, and they directed paramedics through a side entrance, away from public view. Some listeners later believed they heard a woman's voice in the background. Others thought it was only an echo. The sheriff's office never confirmed it, and the family never spoke about it. Maybe that silence is exactly what they deserve. Kyle was taken to a hospital near Charlotte, but the name was never released. For someone as famous as him, that level of privacy was rare. Looking back, the signs were not separate anymore. The sinus issue, the injection, the lingering cough, the pain in the simulator, then the blood on the bathroom floor. It was not one sudden collapse. It was 11 days of his body quietly falling apart while he kept trying to be Kyle Busch for everyone else. 2 words that explained nothing. Thursday morning, May 21st, Kyle's family posted a short update. He had suffered a serious medical issue, was in the hospital, and would miss the Charlotte race weekend. Richard Childress Racing said Austin Hill would drive the number 8, but the seat would be waiting when Kyle was ready to return. A few hours later, everything changed. The Busch family, RCR, and NASCAR released a joint statement. Kyle Busch was gone. They called him a future Hall of Famer, a rare talent, and a once-in-a-generation driver. But the cause of death was described only as a severe illness. No hospital name, no diagnosis, no full timeline. Just silence, protecting a family that had already lost too much. The next day, NASCAR CEO Steve O'Donnell called Kyle an American badass and said the race weekend would continue because that was what Kyle would have wanted. When asked about the cause, he only said more transparency would come in time. But he did share one heartbreaking detail. On Tuesday, the same day Kyle took Brexton to the karting event, Kyle had texted him about creating an over 40 rule so older drivers could run a full truck series schedule. NASCAR discussed it on Wednesday and liked the idea, while Kyle was collapsing less than 30 minutes away. It made fans wonder if Kyle was quietly planning a softer final chapter. Maybe the truck series was not just a playground for him. Maybe it was home. Later, his family found a handwritten list titled 10 Things Before 50. He wanted to coach Brexton in his first NASCAR race, take Lennox to Disney World alone, and make peace with Kurt. It read like a man who truly believed he still had years left. Kyle had also scheduled a Mayo Clinic appointment for May 28, 2026. He knew something was wrong and was trying to get answers. He just never got the chance. RCR then made its final decision. The number 8 would be parked indefinitely and would only return when Brexton was old enough to race. It echoed what RCR once did with Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s number 3. History had repeated itself. Only this time, it left an 11-year-old boy standing in the shadow of a father who was taken far too soon. The questions no one dare answer. A week after the death of Kyle Busch, several painful questions still remained unanswered. The first involved the 911 call. Why were paramedics asked to arrive without sirens and enter through a side door? In most emergencies, every second matters. Some fans wondered if Kyle or the people around him were desperately trying to avoid the chaos of cameras and headlines. It almost felt as if someone already feared this moment was coming. The second mystery was the hospital itself. Somehow, the location never became public. For a NASCAR superstar of Kyle's level, that kind of secrecy was almost impossible. Maybe it was simply about protecting the family. Maybe there was more behind it. Nobody outside that circle truly knows. Then came the medical questions. Several people connected to NASCAR quietly believed the symptoms pointed toward a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in the lungs, the coughing up blood, the breathing problems, the fever. Over years of racing, drivers absorb thousands of violent impacts, and some experts believe those constant hits can quietly damage the body over time. Even the injection Kyle received days earlier may have hidden how serious things really were. Nothing was officially confirmed, but for many fans, it was the first explanation that made the tragedy feel painfully real. And then there was the hardest question of all. Did Kyle know something was wrong long before everyone else did? Fans could not stop thinking about the Mayo Clinic appointment he scheduled in secret, or the sudden effort to reconnect with Dale Jr. after nearly 2 decades, or the 10 things before 50 list found in his notebook, or the message he sent NASCAR about creating an over 40 rule for the Truck Series, almost like he was searching for a quieter place to finish his career. Looking back now, it feels less like random moments and more like a man quietly trying to put his life in order while time was slipping away from him. Maybe Kyle Busch knew, maybe he did not. But that uncertainty is part of what makes this story hurt so much. From the pinnacle to an empty room, a brother lost for words. News of Kyle's death spread through NASCAR almost instantly. Within a day, drivers, teams, and old rivals were all sharing their grief. Denny Hamlin compared him to Kobe Bryant. Brad Keselowski reminded people to hug their loved ones. Jimmy Johnson praised his natural talent. Bubba Wallace admitted he had cried until his eyes hurt. Even Rick Hendrick, who had once let Kyle go, said he had watched him grow up in the sport. But one voice was missing: Kurt Busch. To understand that silence, you have to go back to January 2026, when Kurt entered the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Kyle stood beside him on the red carpet, smiling wider than fans had seen in years. When asked about his brother's induction, Kyle said Kurt deserved it, and that one day he hoped to be up there with him. It was the last time they appeared together in public. After Kyle's death, Kurt was reportedly seen sitting alone inside the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte. He sat facing the wall where his own name was engraved, holding a printed photo from that January red carpet. A guard later said Kurt stayed there for more than 2 hours without saying a word. 4 months earlier, they were standing at the top of the sport together. Now, Kurt was the only one left. Their bond was complicated, but it was real. Kurt once told the world that his little brother was the best driver in the family. Kyle spent the next 2 decades proving him right, 234 times. Since Kyle's passing, Kurt's social media has stayed silent. His name appeared in the family statement, but he has not spoken publicly. Maybe there are some losses no post can carry. Dale Earnhardt Jr. later revealed that he, Kyle, and Kurt had a 3-way group chat. Kyle's final message there was just one smiling emoji, sent Tuesday night, May 19th. No words, no explanation, just that final smile. Neither Dale nor Kurt has replied. The chat remains frozen there. On Dale Jr.'s podcast, he tried to read his own tribute to Kyle aloud. When he reached the part about their planned seat fitting, he broke down and cried at his desk. Fans understood why. In NASCAR, even bitter rivals can become family. In January, Kurt stood at the Hall of Fame podium while Kyle clapped for him. In May, Kurt sat alone with a photo from that night. How do you write a goodbye to the little brother you once told the world was better than you, when he proved it 234 times and left before he could take his own place beside you? The echoes left behind. That was all the time between the first warning sign And the end. It began with an injection at Watkins Glen. Then came the final win at Dover. A birthday post for his son. An arcade night with Brexton. A handshake with Mario Andretti. Maybe even a quiet moment alone in church. Then, by Wednesday, Kyle was on a bathroom floor in Concord. By Thursday, he was gone. What he left behind is almost impossible to measure. 2 Cup Series titles. 234 national wins. A wife who had loved him since 2008. An 11-year-old son who still dreams of driving like his dad. A little girl who had just turned 4. An older brother left staring at a photo in an empty hall. A seat fitting that never happened. A Mayo Clinic appointment he never reached. A list of promises he never got to finish. And one line from Dover, repeated just days before his final breath. Kyle had said, "No one ever knows when the last one will come, so every moment has to be cherished." He was right. At the Richard Childress Racing Shop in Charlotte, the number 8 car now sits under a white tarp. The garage doors close. The pit lane lights stay on. Somewhere nearby, Brexton stands watching the car that may one day belong to him. But not today. That is what makes these 11 days so hard to understand. A race, a birthday, an arcade game, a final message, then silence. Maybe Kyle saw something coming. Maybe he did not. But beneath every theory, one truth remains. None of us ever really know when it will be the last time.